Hello everyone, it's a great pleasure to be here. Um, I'm a graphic artist and designer, and we've had a bunch of interesting presentations about architecture, about sustainable models of building and so on. I think there's an important point there, because how do we, I mean, if you're talking about creating new models, reimagining the way we do things, we need to be able to communicate those ideas. We need to be able to take the community along. It's not like just a bunch of us talking to each other in this auditorium, deciding what should happen next. Communication is a really key thing here, and how you use communication and how you use it in effective ways to how you talk to people and how you listen. Communication is a two-way process. It's not one person talking into the air. It's about conversations between multiple people. And so I'd like to show you a couple of projects I've worked on in the past, which might spark some thoughts and ideas about how we could go about creating interesting communication about new ideas in the valley. So I'm presenting, the first one is called Mapping Mapsa Market. This is a project I did with students of the Goa University, and I'm an artist. I was called in to do art-based program. So I decided to do this. There's a market in this town called Mapsa, which is an old market. It's a historic market. What's interesting about the market is not so much the physical bricks and stones of the market, but it's the people and what they do in the market that is historic, and that's important for the social life and culture and history of Goa to carry on living. It's a very intense, as you can see from this photograph. It's a sort of it's not a very large space, but it's extremely intense and very dense. Next. Okay. The sequence might be a little jumbled, so never mind. I mean, I'm just going to take you through this. Now, this is, so my students and I, over a period of 2-3 years, we've done series of studies of the market. We've looked at people in the market. We've looked at the products they make. We've looked at the food, especially Goa has a rich culture of food making and food production, and very interesting ways in which the Indo-Portuguese kind of fusion has come up in the cuisine of Goa. And so we looked at various different things that are done in the market. There were different projects. There were like for example, this slide that you're seeing is part of a photo story that one of my students created. He looked at this market which happens like a heart, like a Friday market that happens every Friday. On top, obviously, it like gets layered onto the existing market. So the people who come to this Friday market, sometimes it's like it's like a flea market. Sometimes people bring organically grown vegetables from their own gardens. People bring things like this person was just like a typical flea market person, just selling odds and ends that he would collect from different places. So we did a photo story. I mean, the student did a photo story on some of the more interesting people in the market and what their stories are about and why they do what they do. Next. Yeah, this is the project title. It's called Friday People. And next. Now, this is, for example, a person who repairs umbrellas. I mean, the Mapsa market has very interesting people who do very, very distinct kind of things. I mean, in most places in the country, in the world, the idea of repairing things is going out of existence. I mean, people just throw away things and buy new ones. But Mapsa market still has the space for some very interesting things, which they're like very specialized artisans who have developed their own tools and their own techniques to do something necessary and important for the community, and the market creates a space for such people to practice their craft. Next. Fish, of course, that's a very key part of the Goan diet and the Goan lifestyle. So the ladies always who sell the fish in the market. Next. Okay, so I'm just, now this is the introductory section about the market itself, which should have been earlier. But anyway, so this is two other things. Goans, the kind of meat products that they make, pork sausages, and the sea salt. The ladies, again, very strong women who have been there. And today, the development being planned by the Mapsa Municipal Council is trying to evict these women who come there, who have traditionally been there, who don't pay much because they have a traditional right to those spots where they sit. But so the municipal council doesn't get much earnings from them, and therefore wants to kind of get them out and build a double multi-story shopping place where they can get more rents from. So now the thing is, this is typical short-term, short-sighted thinking, where the planning is always done according to economics, according to what is, how do you create more parking space, it's getting crowded, we need to open up these areas. But they forget that the market, a place like this, is an organic entity which has very interesting and very cultural, social, it's an ecosystem, it's like a cultural ecosystem. And you take out some elements, and the others will also die out. And in a way, whatever Goan people would think is the mainstay of their culture, their tradition, is actually being kept alive in spaces like this. And when you remove these spaces or change them, you lose a bit of your own culture and history. So my project has been a way to present to people of Goa why the importance, it's only after it's gone that people will regret it. I mean, that always happens. When it's gone, they'll say, that market used to be so amazing and we used to do everything there, etc., etc. So how to prevent that? How to understand the value of these intangible, or I would call intangible heritage. It's not the stones and bricks of the building that's the heritage. It's the people and their practices. Next. Another typical product that you get only in the market, Goan bread called pao, which the Portuguese brought to India. Next. The market is also a social space. During every festival, the Hindu festival, the Catholic festivals, the Muslim festivals, the market changes. I mean, because different things are needed for each of the festivals. So those things come out into the streets, and the whole character and quality and the colors of the market change. During Christmas is different. During Ganesh Chaturthi is different. And it's a kind of a social space. It's a space where people go and they shop for their festive needs, but at the same time they meet each other, they spend time. Next. Okay, this is another project. This is on Fridays, there are these ladies who come there and they are collectors of herbs, and they have, they're like doctors come, herb collectors come, everything rolled into one. They collect their herbs, they make their mixtures, they have their own kind of cures for everything, and they come and sit at the market with their collections, and people go to them directly and say, oh, I've got a persistent stomachache for 1 week. And so then she talks to you and she understands what your problems are, and then she makes a mixture of the herbs and seeds and traditional medicines and gives it to you. And then you can go and meet her again next week if you're not better or whatever. So now this is a very interesting practice, and we started documenting these herbs. I put some of my students to document this, and I brought in a botanist to identify these herbs and plants, and to try and create a kind of a visual come scientific document of this practice. And the idea was also that perhaps from this we will eventually be able to create some small booklets or pamphlets for these women, because today it's not only the traditional Konkani speaking people from the villages who want this. Even tourists who come there, as you know, Goa is also a very tourism-oriented place. So there are lots of tourists, Indians as well as tourists from all over the world. And they are interested in this medicine also. I mean, today there's a lot of interest in this kind of knowledge. So, but they're not able to communicate with the non-local customers because they only speak Konkani, they don't have the names for things, they can't explain things in the way that modern people might want to understand things. And so the idea was to perhaps out of this documentation, we'll create interesting small booklets and pamphlets which these ladies can use to sort of further their own business with a larger clientele. Next. So these are watercolor studies that I did along with my students, and the documentation of the botanical information. Next. Next. Sorry, this is one of the ladies who sells these herbs, and here she's put out some of her things, and she's explaining to the customer how you should consume that. Next. Just views of the market, more of the photo stories about the sellers. Next. These people sell plants. Again, a lot of interesting local plants. Next. I don't know if you can read that, but this is an interesting little story about how chili plants are attacked by or eaten by sparrows. And again, that's just an interesting piece of knowledge that only a producer or a farmer would have. And this is, my project is aimed at gathering the knowledge and information from people and making them part of the process of redefining what the market should be. Next. Next. Okay, so I'm just going through really quick. What I showed you were just two examples. One was the photo story of the Friday people, and one was the herbs documentation. There are a series of more projects like this. We're collecting a lot of interesting information about the market and its people, and we're creating them into small art projects. But the idea being that we would be able to kind of iterate into a much larger form, which is helping us to convince the larger public of Mapsa and Goa that this market is really important for the culture of Goa today, and it's under threat, and that wrong-minded top-down planning should be stopped. That short-sighted, narrow-minded kind of visions need to be stopped, and we need to have a more inclusive sort of models for the future for development based on close interaction with the community and with a respect for their knowledge and their understanding of things. Okay, so now let me take you to Punjab. This is a very large mural that I created for a museum in Punjab. It tells the story of Punjab in a sense, but it tells it at many different levels. What you're seeing here is a zoomed out view. It's also based on the kind of research that I just showed you at the Mapsa market. It's based on a study of folklore, of history, of everyday life, of crafts and other activities in Punjab. This is a really large mural, and it tells, it is a documentation of the natural landscape as well as the agricultural practices, the crafts practices, the festivals, folklore, stories, and it was very interesting because when I traveled in Punjab and I was meeting people, people would tell me about the village pond, for example. Everybody had, especially the older people, have very lovely memories of the village pond. They'd tell me how they used to gather at the pond and what used to happen there. And but today the ponds are actually garbage bins, garbage dumps. They're just pools of dirty water where people just throw their garbage. And I wanted to recreate this pond of the imagination, the pond of the memory, and put it into this landscape of Punjab for people to think about what they used to have. And there is a very, very, very important Sufi folk story of Heer Ranjha. Some of you may know of it, which for Punjab is like a very defining element of the Punjabi culture and tradition. And it's a tragic love story of these lovers, Heer and Ranjha. And Ranjha in the story, the boy, was a poor buffalo herd. He used to look after the buffaloes of Heer, this rich girl, and that's how they met and they fell in love. So when I talked about this, when I recreated this image of the pond, because the buffaloes, many people would remember how they would take the buffaloes to the pond in the afternoon. So I showed the buffaloes, but I also showed Ranjha, the buffalo herd, and Heer having a meeting, a tryst under a tree near the pond. And so in a sense, memory, folklore, and if you see the birds, those are migratory birds that used to come to Punjab. They are very carefully studied ones. There's Siberian cranes, pintail ducks, and kingfishers and other things, and spot-billed ducks also. These are actual representations. So in a sense, there's also kind of ecological, sort of zoological naturalist representation along with the history and the mythology. And the idea of this kind of a representation is to be able to articulate how a land, a place, is a coming together of many different things. Some real things, some imaginary things, some things which are part of history, some things which are part of your culture, and how do you kind of understand the integral sort of interconnectedness of all this. I mean, when we plan and we make things, when we tend to compartmentalize. I'm an architect, so I'm going to look at the buildings. You know, I'm into town planning, so I'm just looking at the sewage systems and so on. And there isn't, I need to look at how to manage traffic over here. So there isn't a kind of a holistic and community-based thinking happening here at all. And that's, I think, not just in Kashmir, but everywhere this is a big problem. So my work is to be able to inspire people to think in a different way, to be excited and inspired by their own histories, by their own cultures, to get young people involved. Now this road that you see, this is the Grand Trunk Road. So the entire mural is like a representation of the map of Punjab, except that it's not like a map, but it brings in all the key elements in relation to each other. So this is the Grand Trunk Road, which is a very historic road, and which has been the lifeblood of Punjab in a way. And we see all the life along the Grand Trunk Road. We see the Gurdwara there. We also see the dhabas and the truck stops and everything. And there's the sarai, which you can see on top there. And that sarai, I researched how it, you know, because of the partition, a lot of the culture of that came out of the Islamic aspect of Punjab's history has been lost because people moved away, and in their place came people from elsewhere. And sometimes these old sarais, which are actually very, very historic places, which have amazing stories associated with them, are not known in the public imagination so much because the people who live around it don't really know its history. And if you ask villagers, oh, what is this beautiful sarai, old sarai over here, and they'll say, हाँ वो पुराना किला है कुछ राजा महाराजों के time. So people don't know. And so I want to recreate the histories of some of these sarais. So you see also the truck stop, you see all that goes on today, but you also see, I researched old miniature paintings and with the help of experts, and I was able to recreate the scene inside the 15th century, in the 15th century, what the sarai would have been like and what was going on inside the sarai. So anyway, I mean, there's a lot for me to show you in this, but I just want to give you a sense of it, about how to create work and imagery, imagination that can inspire people and make them see the interconnections between every aspect. Thank you.